All right, so this is a video showing how to set up the Analox. So first thing you have to do is about an hour to an hour and a half before you start running samples, you need to get here and you need to turn it on. So if you get here, there's a switch on the back. All you have to do is flip it. This green light will come on. It will say on the screen, electrode warming up. You'll have to wait. This takes approximately 30 to 45 minutes. Next thing you have to do is you have to lay out the lysine reagent, which is stored in the fridge. It needs to be stored anywhere between 0 to 5 degrees Celsius, or this says from 2 to 8 degrees Celsius. The manual says 0 to 5 degrees Celsius. So you can see here, I mixed this one about 5 days ago. And so you have to lay that out. In this kit, if I can get it opened, sometimes it's a little tricky. In this kit, you have a bottle of lysine reagent, a working vial of lactate calibrant. This is empty, but this will normally be full of lactate reagent oxidase, and then a vial or a squeeze bottle of the lactate standard. And then there'll also be some instructions in here. So this needs to be at room temperature before you can run any analysis. So I recommend taking it out of the fridge and even taking it out of this box because it has some insulation in the inside. And so I recommend taking it out of the fridge at least an hour before and taking it all out of the box to let it get to room temperature. If it's not at room temperature before you start running your samples, it will not give you accurate results. So if this is your first time opening up a new bottle, so you'll have to do what we call mixing in the oxidase. So all you'll do, this is already pre-mixed, but I'm going to show you guys how to do that anyways. So what you do is you'll take your full unopened bottle of lysine reagent and your full unopened bottle of lactate oxidase, which there'll be like a little bit of yellow powder in there. You pop that cap off. You're going to pipette a little bit of your lactate lysine reagent into the oxidase. I like to do about 2 syringes. Set that down. Put your cap back on and shake it. This is going to mix all the yellow powder and dilute it into the sample. Then you're just going to simply pour that back in there. And now you have a mixed lysine reagent. So once it's mixed, you have about 2 months to use it if it's stored properly at anywhere between 2 to 8 degrees Celsius. So that is how you mix it. That's the only time you have to mix it is that. Again, this was already pre-mixed. I was just going through that process. So when you get here in the morning, you've laid it out and your machine is warmed up and you're ready to start setting up the machine. So you're going to uncap your lysine buffer and you're going to dump it into the reagent reservoir. Okay, and that's all you do. Then you're going to put this cap on, screw on the lid, and then set it in its designated place. On the screen here, it's going to say, currently it says standby with the continue question mark. We want to go ahead and press no because we don't want it to be in standby anymore. And what it's doing right now is it's going to start cycling in the reagent from this reservoir into the actual machine. So what it's doing right now is it's pumping all this fluid into the machine, priming it, and getting it into this reservoir here. This takes a good second. Okay, so now that it's done cycling, what we need to do is we need to get back to cycle because we still don't have it all the way fully in there yet. And so you just scroll through the menu by pressing no until it gets to cycle. You press yes there, and then we need to cycle it 3 times to get it going in the morning. We already had cycled it once just then, so now we're only going to cycle it 2 more times. And so you just keep pressing no until you get to the number you want. And so we want no, so now it's going to cycle 2 additional times, 3 total, and that's going to prime the machine and get the lysine buffer to the electrode. and now we just sit and wait. While we're waiting for that, what you can do is, this is some old standard, so I'm just going to dump that in our waste. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to gently shake up the actual bottle of the standard, and this is 8 millimoles of standard. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a few drops of that into the working vial. And the reason or the purpose behind this is so that it's easier to pipette the standard out of this as opposed to that bottle. So this is called your working vial of standard. Okay, so we are done cycling, and the lactate buffer is now in the machine and ready to go. It's going to prompt us on the screen to either calibrate yes or no. We want to calibrate, so you're going to press yes, and a message is going to pop up on the screen saying that the electrode is going to settle and that we need to wait. So one thing that we need to note here is that every time we inject this sample, it has to be 50 microliters. So on the pipette, you can see here, it has to say 050 directly on the line. If that's just slightly off, it's going to mess up the results, and so it has to be exactly at 050. Okay, so now the machine is telling me to inject my 8 standard, or my 8.000 standard, which is what this is. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pipette down into it, slowly suck up a sample, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to discard the first 2 samples here. So I discard the first 2 samples, and that way if there's any water in there from rinsing it beforehand, that's going to get that out of there. So now that I've done that, I'm going to again go into the vial, make sure it's fully submerged, and slowly suck up 8 or 50 microliters. I'm going to then inject down, push, hold for 1, 2, pull up, and release. And so that action is you go down, you push down, you push, hold 1, 2, pull up, and then release. So again, down, push, hold 1, 2, up, and then release. And so that's the proper pipette skill for this device. If you don't hold it at the end, or you release up while it's still in there, you run the chance of sucking back up the blood sample, which is not good. And if you don't hold it, you run the chance of the drop just sitting there not being analyzed. So this spit out a calibration complete, which is 8 millimoles. And so now the machine is calibrated and you're ready to run your next sample. Okay, so after you take your blood sample, which is just the same as for the Cholestech, so you do your finger prick, and then you suck up a good amount of blood into the capillary tube. And so if you look, the capillary tube is about that long, so you need to suck up just shy of half. Okay, once it gets there, it's going to be bright red. You need to heparinize it, so you need to keep rotating it until it gets to a dark red color. That means it's heparinized. I like to do it at least 5 to 10 times from end to end just to get it heparinized. From there, you're going to take your pipette. It needs to be at exactly 50 microliters. You're going to push down in, barely insert the tip into the capillary tube, slowly suck up a sample. Make sure there's no air bubbles. You're going to discard the first drop. Then you're going to suck up a second sample. And you're going to inject. So you're going to press down, press, hold, 1, 2, pull up, and then release. So it's press down, down, hold 1, 2, bring it up, and then release. And then it's going to analyze, and then you can write down. We always run 2 samples, especially if it's more than about 0.3 difference, you would run a 3rd sample. But that's how you run a sample on the Analox.